Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, the Interplanetary Chase, and to the Lathe copter, of which we've deployed in the previous episode. You may or may not remember that we are very quickly running out of electric charge, and therefore are having to time warp to allow our solar panels to recharge our electricity so we can continue, of course, transmitting the experiments that we've previously done, although as you can see, we are in a bit of a violent loop here with regards to running out of power. I mean, we've only just recharged and got all of the experiments transmitted, so it's about time that we have a little flight, of course, and see if we can't collect any more data from maybe somewhere else on Lathe. So we do find this little spring here. I'm not necessarily sure if this classes as an anomaly because there are quite a few of these, but I've not actually seen one of these before. So we land next to it, shut off, and as you can see, there's nothing that we can really earn from it. So whatever, not a problem. Let's fly kind of towards the coastline here, maybe get some science from the water, because of course we haven't done that yet. So slow down, have a nice little landing eventually. There we go, loads of science we can do, so we're absolutely going to be doing that. Up we go. Maybe land back on the surface here to give us a chance to maybe transmit, or at least recharge our electric power. Transmit all. And once again, the electric charge has managed to hold. So take off again, have a little flight, maybe over to that other island we can see off to the north of us. So I think we are actually just below the equator, so of course flying north would actually help in terms of positioning ourselves correctly. As you can see, we've reached the other islands. We still have pretty good signal strength owing to the comms network we set up in the last episode. I believe that was the last episode at least. And as we begin to land here, we do unfortunately break off one of the propeller blades on the side engines there, but not a problem. If anything, that just limits our speeds, and I think we could still use it, we just might be a little bit wobbly. So I think we're pretty much done with the Lathe copter for now, and as you can see, we have loads of science to spend following all the transmissions we did. So I think we're pretty good in terms of rocketry now, although we're a little bit behind with regards to aerodynamics. So I think we're going to actually just beeline our way through some of the aerodynamic nodes, such as supersonic flight, high altitude flight, and some of the more advanced things like, you know, the whiplash engines and maybe even the rapiers. But having a look at that, that's 1,000 science, whereas we could put that into heavy aerodynamics or maybe even some other landing nodes. So let's just have a look to see what we have. There is nano-lathing, but that only gives us some adapters. Specialised electronics, APU, fuel cell array, and eventually that will take us down experimental electronics with some RTGs, which I think is quite necessary given where we are in our space program. So we'll get that, and that's it for now. So we have about 600 science left. Now, what I would like to do is I want to go ahead and build a bit more of an efficient way of getting some crew members to the, if any of you remember it's there, the Kerbal Orbital Lab. Reason being is because I want to use it again to start getting some more science. Now, on the note of that, we are running a little bit low on Kerbals once again. So, ladies and gents, the time has come. If you would like me to put a Kerbal in this save, please comment down below with what you would like their name to be, as well as their profession being either pilot, engineer or scientist, and I will do my best to accommodate as and when. But more on topic, of course, we are building an SSTO. A little bit unconventional because of course we are using the atomic motors rather than rapiers or just regular rocket motors. The idea being that the whiplash ramjets, or whatever they are, should be able to get us up to hypersonic speed, by which point we'll be able to obviously transform that energy that we should ideally gain in the high atmosphere into altitude, and of course then the nuclear engine should be enough to push us, or at least help us circularize. They may need some assistance, but we'll see as and when. Now, I must say, I'm loving this wing design here. It reminds me a little bit of maybe the F-22 or the F-35, and of course with the Elevon Mark IIs as well to make it all look nice and flush. Just make sure that all fits in with the rear of the engines there. Now, With regards to maybe a tail design, I do have something in mind, but we just need to do a few refinements, obviously, with the engines and the nacelles. We have got a pre-cooler there to assist with air intakes as well. Good rule of thumb is, I believe, one of those hypersonic intakes, I forgot what they're called, the shot cone intakes for each Rapier engine, but of course we're not using Rapiers, so I'm not particularly sure on how many we need, but either way this should do. Now, this tail design, once again, I quite like this. I mean, we don't necessarily have very much stability with regards to having a rudder, because of course the only rudder in air quotes we have are those two stabilizers keeping the all-flying tail up. Well, it's not really an all-flying tail, is it? But it's like a box tail, so we might need to, well, obviously we are going to test this, see how it performs, see how stable it is in high atmosphere, because of course if we're pulling up and at hypersonic speeds, we are going to need a bit of your authority to keep the nose pointing the correct direction, aren't we? And of course, with angle of attacks that high, there's not going to be any air going over the top of the aircraft, which means that there'll be nothing to keep the nose pointing to where it needs to go. I'm not particularly sure if that's how it works in vanilla Kerbal space program, or at least vanilla physics engine, because of course we don't have anything like Ferrum Aerospace installed, but I am considering it. But for now, obviously, as it stands, I don't know if that counts. Now, obviously, canards at the front, angled slightly upwards for a nice dihedral to keep it stable. Once again, that may have an adverse effect on our stability with regards to yaw, but we won't know until we test it, will we? Not forgetting the RCS thrusters, of course. I was considering putting a monoprop APU, so we don't have to put solar panels, but I think I'm just overcomplicating things. I mean, even then, I do just go ahead and put some solar panels on there anyway, so, you know, very clever. But regardless, we'll see how this performs. Not forgetting the ladder, of course. And I think it's only fair we have Jeb as our test pilot here, being one of our most experienced Kerbals, setting up the action groups, and we are ready to go. So, first test, and we take off at about 80-90 meters per second. We have a ton of lift. Well, not literally, but you know, once again, it's owing to this wing and box tail design, which I absolutely love, as we are able to smash through Mach 1 quite easily, break through the cloud layer, of course. We are accelerating a little bit slowly, although I imagine that will accelerate, well, we should accelerate quicker, of course, once we reach higher altitudes where the air's thinner and the whiplash engines can truly come into their own. And as you can see, that is exactly what's happening as we are entering the kilometre per second regions. And it's more or less time that we pull up and cash in our speed for altitude. Although I may have done that slightly wrong, that was a very inefficient pull up, and as you can see, the nose did wiggle around as well, meaning we might need to have a look at our yaw stability. Eventually I did have to just keep the aircraft or the nav ball keeping progrades while manually keeping an eye on the pitch, just to keep the nose pointing in the correct heading. Wouldn't be a problem if we had something like MechJet, but that's incompatible with some of my mods, and it might be a little bit cheaty. So, as you can see, that didn't necessarily work. We did fall back down into the atmosphere, so back to the drawing board. First things first, of course, let's address the problems we have with your stability. We're going to put a nice little delta wing kind of beneath the box wing here to kind of close things off. And I must say, I think this looks really, really cool. It's a bit of an unconventional design, but once again, at high angles of attack, we now have some rudders, so to speak, to keep us pointing in the correct direction. Now, with regards to breaking out the atmosphere, I don't want to change the engines because, you know, we need the efficiency with the amount of fuel we have being not much. So, what I decided to do was we're going to put an RCS tank round the back, as you can see, and we're going to look for the puff monoprop engines. And what we may be able to do is we may be able to actually use our monopropellant to act as, I suppose, a fuel to allow us to escape the atmosphere. I was maybe considering putting some nose cones here, but instead we go for an air intake, and it almost acts as a boat tail design for those puff engines, and I am a massive fan of that design. I think that looks brilliant. So, attempt 2. Just fire the puff engines quickly and they do work. It is draining from the front monoprop tank as well, so that's no concern. We might go a little bit slower in the lower atmosphere where we have got a little bit of additional mass, and of course not to mention extra drag from the rudders, but it's nice and stable as you can see. Yes, we have SAS enabled, but if you look down in the bottom left, when I turn my HUD back on from that lovely view, you'll see that the only input that the SAS is currently providing is of course pitch. As we are reaching more or less 700 meters per second now, at 8 kilometers altitude, 9 and 10 kilometers altitude. So we're going to point progrades, kind of naturally bring the nose down a little bit. I think this isn't the most efficient ascent because we are a little bit too high up for this stage, so we're going to fire the nuclear engines and begin our pull up to see if we can escape the atmosphere. And we're going to fire the monoprop engines along with the nuclear engines. Keep an eye on our monopropellant levels, as you can see. We are accelerating, and as you can see the apoapsis is increasing. However, the time to apoapsis, I'm afraid, is decreasing, which means that it's a race against time for us to break the carbon line. And as it stands, looking at our monoprop levels versus how quickly the apoapsis is increasing, I think it's safe to say we're not going to reach it. I mean, anything can happen. Of course, we have just run out of monoprop though, so we are strictly relying on the nuclear engines now. Just point progrades, maybe increase our orbital speeds, but of course, it's not quite enough. So, back to the hangar once again. Not a problem. We are going to replace those wing kind of end sections with an Oscar B fuel tank, followed by air intake at the front, battery round the back. I was thinking of spark engines, but those make the same amount of thrust as the puff engine, so there's not really any point. We need to build something that has a bit more oomph, and eventually I do maybe think, let's try the twitch engines. And of course, because they're radial, we can attach them anywhere we want. So we might attach them around the sides of the rear nose cone of that little engine pod there, as you can see. Now, my only concern, of course, is that these things use liquid fuel and oxidizer, which means we will have to fill up the rear bicoupler a little bit, as that is the only part that can actually carry oxidizer other than the engine pods themselves that we have on board. We're also going to reduce the amount of solar panels we have, just to reduce the mass. I know it's marginal, it doesn't really do anything at all, but of course every little helps, right? And not forgetting the RCS pods on the sides, and attempt 3, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. Jebediah is more than happy as we roll down the runway, accelerating very nicely. 50 meters, 60, 70, and V1, and rotate. And we are airborne, ladies and gents. So of course we're going to keep our nose at roughly a 5 to 10 degree climb angle there, pitch angle, as we are actually, by the looks of things, going to break through a thunderstorm in our terminal acceleration phase, which will be very interesting. And I must say, I absolutely love these graphical mods. The one that provides for thunderstorms, I believe, is BlackRack's stock volumetric clouds. It brings weather systems all around Kerbin, and I must say it is absolutely incredible. Of course, there is also the new parallax mods, but I haven't installed those yet because last time I tried to run them, yes, it looks amazing, but it made the game nigh unplayable because of performance hits. But of course, either way, it looks pretty nice as it stands as we break through Mach 1. We are now supersonic. And here we go, 2.5 kilometers, reaching 400 meters per second as we break through the initial cloud layer. And have a lovely view on the way up. Reaching 450 meters per second now. We have a climb rate of approximately 100 meters per second. Once again, I imagine our massive wings will be assisting us in this particular phase of the flight. Maybe not so much when we try to leave the atmosphere, because by that point it is simply additional mass. But the idea is these wings should allow us to build up so much speed that once again we can cash that in for a higher angle of attack, hopefully in a more efficient way, so we don't bleed off all of our energy while performing that manoeuvre and carry that upwards with us. But it's all to play for, isn't it? We'll see what happens as we reach 800 meters per second. We're going to begin leveling off as we approach the 10 kilometer mark, and it's time for our terminal acceleration phase before we pull up. So here we go. As you can see, we have started to get the plasma effects surrounding our aircraft, meaning we are entering the hypersonic regions. Jebediah looking very content down there. Just making sure that our nose is pointing at the horizon. And it's time to hit the nuclear engines as we reach 1.2 kilometers per second. As you can see, we have started getting some heating effects, so it's time to begin the pull-up manoeuvre. And we're doing so using the caps lock manoeuvring modes, so we are pulling the stick very slowly rather than instantly as you would do without it. You can see in the bottom left it's got blue instead of orange, which is what that means there. And here we go, back to the manoeuvre modes. You can see that our apoapsis is increasing very, very quickly. We're already at 40 kilometers now, and that is actually further than we managed to get in any other of our pull-up phases. We managed to carry roughly 1.2 kilometers per second into this. Obviously, our jet engines have flamed out, so it's time to shut those off, and we have our Switch liquid fuel oxidizer engines assisting our liquid fuel atomic motors, meaning that we should be okay for fuel. Obviously, the only thing we have to worry about with the Twitch engines are their levels of oxidizer before they also flame out. Orbital speed approaching 1.4 kilometers per second. Our apoapsis is 65 roughly seconds away, and the altitude of our apoapsis is increasing. Need to fix our roll here because we're not keeping an eye on that. These engines may actually do the trick. We have twice the amounts of thrust with those engines as we did with the puff engines, obviously alongside our nuclear engines. And we are just about to run out of oxidizer here, but again our apoapsis is still a minute away. And those have run out of oxidizer, no problem. With the altitude we're at, of course, we may be able to push our apoapsis out beyond the Kármán line simply using our atomic motors now. Or at least here's hoping. Once again, the reason I chose the atomic motors is because they don't require oxidizer in a vacuum. Combined, obviously, with the two of them together in a vacuum, they only make 120 units of thrust, but the idea is, if you make it to a vacuum with an SSTO, then you shouldn't need to worry about efficiency because you've got the hardest part done. And as you can see, our apoapsis is approaching 70 kilometers, ladies and gents, and the moment we pass that line, we will officially be in outer space. Okay, well, maybe not outer space, but we will be in space. As you can see, we have brought the nose down pointed progrades just to assist us to build a little bit more orbital speeds here. The apoapsis is now falling as we are no longer keeping the nose in a climbing position. Well, the apoapsis isn't falling, but the time to apoapsis is. And check out our periapsis, which is currently negative 310 kilometers. Once again, that needs to be up at 70 as well, positive 70, in order for us to be in Kerbal orbit. 30 kilometers away from our apoapsis now. Orbital speed is 1,850 meters per second, and once again, the quicker that gets, the easier it will be for us to accelerate. Our apoapsis is now in space, and that is only 15 seconds away, so we will need to consider pointing the nose up again to see if we can push the time to apoapsis away and allow us to bring the periapsis into the positives, as it's currently negative 220. So, ladies and gents, we are now in space. Now it's a matter of circularizing. And of course, by keeping the nose pointing upwards at roughly a 45-degree angle, look how quickly that periapsis is coming up away from the negatives. I think it's only a matter of time before we end up in a orbit around Kerbin And being honest, I'm very impressed that we've managed to achieve this using atomic motors. As we're approaching 2.2 kilometers per second orbital speeds, we are very, very close to entering the orbital speed for a low Kerbin circularization. Periapsis is now in the positives. Apoapsis has been pushed up to 75 kilometers, so we're just going to coast up to that before, of course, we continue our circularization. Here we go. Periapsis is now at 50, 60, and 70. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now officially in orbit around Kerbin. So, all things considered, I think this has been quite a nice success. Now, as you obviously saw in the editor, this isn't a cargo SSTO by any means. This is just to bring Kerbals up to the Kerbin Orbital Lab and, allow them to maybe, get into their living quarters, begin some science. And of course, if I remember correctly, this SSTO does have a drone core, which means we'll be able to bring it home unmanned. But of course, the idea is it's got a crew quarters on there anyway, so anyone in there should move on to the station. The cockpit should just be left alone. But regardless, just get rid of the debug menu for diffuse rendering. And nice little screenshot. Wonderful. That might be our thumbnail, I'm not sure. We'll see what happens after I've rendered this video. So, back in you get, Jeb. Thank you very much for your little spacewalk. And, of course, it's one thing getting into space, but it's another thing getting home, of course, isn't it? So, we're going to point retrograde here and fire up atomic motors, bring our orbital velocity down, and our periapsis is now within the atmosphere. So, that has been a nice, successful suicide burn, and now we need to prepare for atmospheric re-entry. And of course, given that we have a low Kerbin orbit of 75 kilometers, that's going to be happening very, very soon. So first things first, we need to move all of our fuel as far forwards as it can possibly go. Reason being is because that brings the centre of mass forwards, and the idea is we need to keep the centre of mass in front of the centre of lift to avoid any flips. So we're going to move all the liquid fuel into the furthest liquid fuel tank we have. Thankfully we have no oxidizer. Monoprop has been done as much as we can. So time to pop the air brakes. And I have a feeling that we may overshoot the Kerbal Space Centre. However, I think we are unfortunately too low to make any corrections now without being subjected to aerodynamic stresses. Speaking of stresses, you can see that the cockpit is actually the first part that begins experiencing atmospheric re-entry heating effects as the plasma effects begin to reappear. We are pulling up as hard as we can, but the nose is starting to fall, so I think it's only fair that we kick in some RCS thrusters to try and claw back some control authority. As you can see, our surface speed is decreasing. We're at roughly 1.8 kilometers per second at 40 kilometers altitude. And I actually decided to try doing a little bit of side slip, similarly to how the NASA shuttle would re-enter, because of course that helps bleed off energy and distribute the heat throughout the panels underneath the shuttle, if I remember correctly. I'm not an expert, but I appreciate the designs and of course would love to try flying one in a simulator. And as you can see, we have unfortunately completely overshot the Kerbal Space Centre, as is standard for new SSTO pilots. Not even SSTO pilots, just Kerbals generally speaking. Honestly, if you don't overshoot the Kerbal Space Centre when you build an SSTO or an atmospheric re-entry vehicle, you've done something wrong. Let's be honest. Nice little screenshot, as of course we are surrounded by the plasma effects. 1.6 kilometers per second now. I might need to consider adding some more air brakes, but of course that's a problem for future us. We need to get Jebediah home without killing him, ideally, so here we go. The lower we are, obviously the hotter things will get, but furthermore the air will get thicker, which means we'll slow down much quicker. 1.5 kilometers per second. And I think we should continue side slipping now. Maybe begin a turn back to the Kerbal Space Center. 1.4 kilometers per second. 1.3. Here we go. We have definitely been captured in the atmosphere now. Those winglets underneath the wings there are doing a wonderful job of keeping us stable. 1.1 kilometers per second now. And we are coming back down through the hypersonic region. Engines have got enough air as we come back in the subsonic regions. And we have turned around, ultimately found ourselves pointing north somehow. So we need to point west, and of course, because of our lack of fuel, we need to climb if we are even going to have a chance of making it back to the space centre. Throttle down a little bit, see if we can be a bit more efficient with our fuel. Ultimately, we are slowing down a little bit, and looking at our fuel, I don't think we're going to make it, so we're just going to climb a little bit more. Turn all the fuel we have into speeds, and unfortunately, we do have a flame out as the engines are now liquid fuel deprived. Now, looking at our glide profile, safe to say we are not making it back to the space centre. However, as you can see, the island runway has come to our rescue. So we're going to see if we can possibly put her down on the island airfield and maybe recover this vessel. We've turned off the SAS and have just not automatically, but trimmed our elevator to maintain enough speeds during our approach. Gears down, eventually. Here we go. Time to pop the brakes, which will also pop the air brakes. And here we go, preparing for touchdown. And touchdown again, there we go. Right, so we are slowing down, but not very quickly. And the end of the runway is rapidly approaching as we continue on at 60 meters per second. 50 now, we're going to begin drifting, trying to bleed off some energy, but it's too late, the end of the runway has come. Jebediah, eject, as we pop the drone chute even, the parachute. Jebediah is fine, the SSTO has bounced, and it has now turned into a trail of debris along the island airfield. Not a problem. The Kerbals have plans for the SSTO. It's been proven to work. Maybe we need to add some drone shoots for landing, but we've done it, ladies and gents. We have a successful SSTO design. The Jebediah has not got any new ribbons. So we are coming up towards the end of today's episode, so thank you guys very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Kerbal Space Program and related content. Comment your name and your profession if you want to be added, and I will see you guys in the next episode.